Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today in this edition of the 49er Industry Chats. Today, we have a great chat for you, how to make career pivots and get into the music industry. And I'm so excited to welcome our alumni host today, Joseph Sapida. How are you doing, Joseph?
I feel great. We are getting into the holiday season. My gift shopping is almost done, which is the most biggest thing on my mind. But no, I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to hopefully give some golden nuggets for the university that really brought me to where I'm at now. But I'm really excited. I think we'll have a lot to talk about.
Awesome. Well, just to give all of you folks some background on Joseph, uh, Joseph is the early career talent strategist and senior recruiter for the world's leading live entertainment company, Live Nation Entertainment. Since early 2022, he's established a university recruiting strategy, developed relationships with nonprofit organizations in music, spearheaded a global mentorship program, and championed diversity across all business verticals. He's also an active lead for Live Nation's AAPI Employee Resource Group, providing career counseling and searching support for employees worldwide. He specializes in recruiting for booking, creative, finance, ticketing, strategy, and venue operations positions from coordinator to SVP level. Prior to Live Nation, he worked in electric vehicles, finance, and business services as a talent sourcer and university recruiter. When he's not working, Joseph enjoys making underrated Spotify playlists. I think most of them are, and I can't wait to hear some of those later. Uh, and playing fantasy football, basketball, practicing Muay Thai, thrifting, and live events of all kinds, be it music, stand up, sporting, and just about everything else. So, yeah, I mean, you are a busy guy, Joseph.
All right. I'll take
Yeah,
that as a compliment today.
I love how I love how you clearly kind of are you're in your career and you seem to have struck some sort of good chord with your career and the extras that go along with that, and also life stuff. So if you would, though, I think a lot of folks would be interested if you might share a little bit about your background and what your experiences were like that led you to come to CSULB in the first place.
Oh, yeah, interesting. So I'm originally from the Bay Area, San Francisco. I was, and that was a pre-nursing major to start. Cal State Long Beach is one of the best nursing programs around, especially amongst the Cal States. And I had a lot of family in LA, specifically in Long Beach. And so that city was just more familiar to me than any other university that was at least like more local in the Bay Area, like a UC Berkeley or UC Davis, Cal State Sac, you name it. And so for me, when I had gotten accepted to a few colleges in the Bay Area and in LA, which were the only universities that I had applied to, which is local within California, I chose the best program that made sense for me at the time. I chose a city that felt most familiar to me. And I also wanted to get out of my shell a little bit, leave the home nest for a little bit and just see if I can figure things out on my own.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, and what was your student experience like when you were at CSULB? Were you in, like any clubs? Did you have activities you were part of? Any professors that were profound or peer groups that maybe you still keep in contact with today? What was it like when you were a student at the beach?
For sure. Like I didn't do enough research when I looked into this university. And I know when you look at my background now, I'm a recruiter that works in music, and I just said I'm a pre-nursing major. So there's a lot to that, getting the journey to get there. But um, at Cal State Long Beach. I dormed my first year. I dormed at Beachside, which I don't know if the name is the same, but the out of campus. Um, uh, how do you say dorm at the time, and I just really wanted to get just really ingrained into the culture, if you will, into the university culture. But while I was in college, I was involved in a few student organizations. I was involved in um, the Filipino American organization. Uh, it's called PAC, Filipino American Coalition. I was involved in a few. I was involved in the Healthcare Administration Student Forum, which is a more professional organization. I got to work with ASI, as well as a few other organizations that put some events on campus. I lived in Long Beach for the rest of my time that I worked, that I went to school there. But I really loved the campus. Like I spent a lot of like 12 to 15-hour days on campus. I brought two meals with me that I made myself just to stay through the day. Usually I did like after the first couple of years, we don't really have too much of a choice as far as like schedule options go. I started doing a lot of I tried to squeeze all my classes into like 2 to 3 days out of the week. I always had like night classes every semester during those last 2 to 3 years, just because I'd rather just stay on campus, get my work done, because it just meant more productive to me. But I just felt like, so comfortable on campus. It's a beautiful city. It's a beautiful campus itself. I loved getting my LB burritos, every at least once a week. I still think it's one of the best burritos I've ever had. I still would go to the open mics and things at the Nugget. Um, and whenever there was like live music or like stuff on campus at the USU, I would do that. I went bowling a lot. I played pool a lot on campus. I took advantage of like the nap pods or whatever it was during finals week. Like I tried to be as ingrained into the campus as much as I could as far as what was happening there. So, nothing but good things to say.
Awesome. And I think there's, that glaring question of like, you went to school, you went to go pursue nursing, but that's not where you ended up. So, if if you could explain, what was that journey like? How did you, how did you find your way into the career that your path that you're in now? Was it intentional? Was it something you fell into? Was there some sort of aha moment? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mix of all of the above. I was doing really well with my prereqs. And I got my first like almost B. Like I was like already knowing I was gonna get a B in anatomy, I think, which I know for a lot of the students that taking anatomy 101 or whatever the class is, was tough. But at the same time, I just had like a life change. And a close family member of mine had passed, and it kind of just threw me for a loop. And I was like, what do I want to do? Is this what I really want to do and do nursing? And so it had nothing to do with the quality of education I was receiving. It just had to do with life. And when you're in college during some really like a pivotal time in your life, for most, anywhere like late teens to early mid 20s, like a lot changes. Um, and I took advantage of going to the career resource center. Like I had, we all have an advisor. We just don't know it, unless we look for it. I had like several hour-long sessions with an advisor talking through, okay, I kind of want to make a switch. I don't know where I'm going to go. And ultimately, I had actually switched majors 3 times,
Wow.
3 whole times. And I never felt like I was too behind. I felt like around my peers, I didn't think I knew what I wanted, which was something that was always lingering. But I didn't think I didn't have enough support, if you will. And so how I got to recruiting and music, um, I mean, long story short, I didn't get the job. I was an intern at a good healthcare company in LA. I didn't get the full-time job afterwards. I struggled to find opportunities after that, after I graduating. And for those I get to watch this, I think something I always say is that I think the first job after college is the hardest. I think people that make career pivots, maybe they come back from work after like having a child or like taking care of a like elderly parent, what have you, is really up there. But I still think that like that first job out of college is the hardest when it isn't just so seamless. And that's what it was like for me. I struggled finding jobs. I found an opportunity working in sales and health in healthcare, which was like enough for me because I was working in healthcare. That slowly didn't pan out. But then I took that experience and I interviewed for a healthcare administrator position that happened to be with an agency, a staffing agency, those headhunters, if you will, third party companies that find jobs for you. And they said, I can get you this job in healthcare administration, or you present really well. Would you ever consider working in staffing? At the time, I wasn't working. I was like Ubering, doing Lyft, and all these little things. And so I was like, in my head, I'll take a job where I can get it. So yes, absolutely, I would love an opportunity to interview in staffing. It was all just history from there. It's been maybe 5.5 years. I've worked in recruiting. This is my fourth job in recruiting within that time frame, but this is the longest I've been at a company, and I'm planning on it being for much longer. But I think ultimately my situation was just a story of like having to kind of pivot when necessary and putting I put my all into all the jobs that I did, and the every opportunity that I've gotten since then has been either through referrals or my experience transferred to the next job and so on. And so even if it wasn't the job that I knew I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and not just the job of recruiting, but like the company I worked at, I let my work speak for itself. And eventually I got an opportunity here that happened to be with my old boss. And they just spoke really highly of me and were like, this person can definitely do the job. And so working in this industry is a dream of mine, but I think it's a mix of just letting your work speak for itself. And every now and then, I think luck is a part of it, but I think that preparation for it, I think just working each day and like just showing that, maybe this isn't the job of your dreams, but you can prove yourself and get yourself to there at some point. I think there was a certain expectation of patience that I had. And now I'm at a point where like I feel really, really good about what I'm doing.
That's great. And speaking about what you're doing, what does a typical day look like in your position?
Sure. I read resumes. I tell a lot of people that unfortunately we don't pay as well. Funny enough. I also spend a lot of time telling people why I like working here. Because people love to ask me that, and I'm happy to answer. And at the end of the day, my job is to review applications, to hit people up on LinkedIn, tell them about the job, tell them about the company, what I like about it, but also, make sure people are the right fit. The usual things you think about, qualifications, industry experience, all that good stuff. And ultimately, at the end of the day, my job kind of ends, if you will, when I get to hire somebody. I get to offer somebody a job, they sign the offer on the dotted line, and I just give them a high five, pound on the back, and say, "All right, I'll see you in the office," whenever. So put it simply, that's what I do.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's pretty exciting for folks to be able to actually speak to a recruiter or watch a recruiter, share what they do, and maybe even share some tips. So, if there's someone out there that's looking to work at a company like Live Nation, whether maybe it, being in the music industry or just being a very large organization, what are the types of things that they should be looking to showcase about themselves? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I'll answer music industry and then just working at a bigger company. For one thing, getting into the music industry, you have to be able to show that you can do what we do, like booking artists, working with like artist contracts, marketing shows, doing ticketing, box office stuff at a collegiate level. At the end of the day, if you can do what we do on a much smaller scale, then we trust that you can do it on a bigger scale at a bigger company. And that goes for all companies, really, especially the bigger ones. So ASI plans events on campus. I'm forgetting the names of the specific ones, but when I was in college, like we got to see Miguel who performed there. We got to see, gosh, I'm forgetting a few other folks, but Miguel was like the main one. I think Wale performed there one year when I was there. So a lot of like hip hop R&B-esque at the pyramid. And so you can book events on campus. You could do what we do with like Madonna, with Beyonce and all those other and all those other big names at a much smaller scale at a college like Cal State, Palm Beach. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think 90% of those folks get interviews. But also on a part-time basis, or you can easily, I don't want to say easily, but you can find jobs working at a venue in LA. I mean, it's LA. When when isn't there something that isn't going on at any time of the day? You can work bar staff, front of house, servers, hosts, box office, ticket sales, um, VIP, whatever. As you can work back of house, doing lighting, being a runner, just moving equipment around. It can be hard to find the jobs, but once you find that, it shouldn't be hard for you to get in there because we're hiring like crazy all the time. This industry grows every year. It's not like a startup that's like 300% every year, but we gradually grow every year because of the industry that we're in, and we're getting more global. There's a lot more Latin music, K-pop, bossa nova, even. That's growing, that people are really interested in. So people have a more global taste for music, which means there's some more global opportunities and just generally more opportunities in this industry. And again, it's LA. It's a lot harder for somebody to get a job in, I don't know, something along like Fresno, in mid California, as we say, than it is in LA. And so finding jobs at venues is like, I think, the next biggest, best route to get music industry experience. And I have worked at a few big name companies. All of them have been publicly traded, which I think there's a certain, like, I guess, like brand level recognition that you sort of really have to let your experience speak for itself, your industry experience speak for itself, especially. And so in college, get involved with business associations, create a really strong network for yourself, get internship opportunities as much as possible. Try to have a certain level of consistency as well, consistency in industry or consistency in the job function that you're doing. And what I mean by that is like if you're trying to get into healthcare, continue to do healthcare internships. But bonus on top of that, if you can specifically do project management, risk management, um, whatever it might be, and have that consistency. Like it can be a little bit tougher if you're in healthcare, but you do project management 1 month or 1 semester, and then you do risk, and then you do like patient care. It doesn't really show like a focus on your resume, if you will. So I think having a certain consistency that your resume can tell a story for yourself of what you're trying to do without having to ever interview you. Better yet, even if we don't even have to write a cover letter, I still recommend it. But if your resume can tell a story, then that people can follow, or a trajectory, better yet, then you're probably on the right track.
Yeah. What are what are some of those things that are disqualifiers or things that folks should, when you pick up a resume and when you're sitting at your desk and you're doing your job, what are like those things that you see that just are like they're a no pile? Like what should people be avoiding?
Man, don't spell Los Angeles wrong in your resume. There's very specifics. Like grammar, punctuation, spelling. It's all the basic things that like maybe 30% of people of applicants don't do. Like put your resume in a PDF, please. Your format's gonna look horrible in a Word doc. You just don't want to risk it. Um, they spell cities wrong. They forget to put periods at the end of all their bullets, so it's inconsistent. They don't like run it through Grammarly, a free app, to make sure that like your grammar is correct. It's just all the little things. Because at the end of the day, especially for big name companies, excuse me, that people want to get into, and realistically, smaller companies too, um, when you have to just assume that for an entry level position, for an internship more so, they're probably getting upwards of 200 applications. Just assume that you're one of 200 plus. some of our internships have 500 plus within like 3 weeks. When you think about that and you think that only one person gets the job, you can't make any mistakes. You can't make any easy ones. And so people think that their experience speaks for itself. Like maybe, to some extent, yes, but really at the end of the day, each step of the process gets you to that next step. And so your resume has to be great to get you the interview. Your interview has to be great to get you that next interview. And then your negotiations and how you present yourself ultimately can get you the job. I think people forget that. But ultimately, it's like the biggest disqualifiers are at the end of the day just you even getting the interview before you get the interview. Don't misspell things, don't have grammar issues, don't put a picture of yourself in your resume. There's so many like easy do's and don'ts, because there's so many ways to make a good resume. There's a billion other ways to make it bad or to do something wrong, I think. And most of that can just be taken care of by, you know, having multiple people read your resume, take it to a career counselor to get your resume redone. I've done that several times. It isn't that hard to make yourself stand out if you put the time and effort for
Yeah. And what about when you're on the next step, right? When you got that interview, right? And one person gets the job, but many people get an interview. So what are some of the do's and don'ts for when you're actually in an interview?
it. Yeah, so I think you have to answer questions in what is popularly known as the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result. Um, People really care about you being able to paint a picture in your interviews. So you have to communicate really well, which, just kind of goes without saying. I think researching the company, its values, recent news, um, reviews of employees that have worked there or even interviewed there, because you can find reviews on interview processes at companies, especially the bigger ones like us. Do your due diligence, researching and having just really good questions at the end. Researching the company, um, researching the your interviewers, if you can find them on LinkedIn, find something that you guys have in common. Like at the end of the day, the best interviews feel like a conversation. And on top of it, unless they're really short because the recruiter at the end of the interview just says, you know what, I don't have to ask you any more of these questions. I think I'm just gonna push you forward. If that doesn't happen within like 10 to 15 minutes, which is perfectly fine, it's super rare. Um, your interview will either be your typical 30 to 45 minutes, or it'll last longer and it feels really relaxed and feels like it's more of a conversation than a formal interview. And ultimately, that ends up being like the best indicator of if you're doing really well. If they get along with you, if they trust you to not have to be so formal that they feel like they haven't missed anything, you could just build a really good rapport with them. Ultimately, the bonuses of like having things in common help, like maybe you're a similar sports fan, maybe you guys like went to the same university, which I think is a really big help when you're trying to build your network is reach out to other folks at this university, alumni of this university through LinkedIn. Um, but you've got to come prepared and answering those questions, the STAR method, asking good questions, doing your research. There really isn't anything that you couldn't find online, honestly, but you do have to do it.
Absolutely. Well, I circling back to your journey and your experience as a recruiter. What would you say is the most challenging part of your job, and also what's the most rewarding?
Yeah. What I think is like the most rewarding is at the end of the day, I've been here for just under 2 years, and I've already seen people that I hired get promoted in this company. Um, and like for like I'm a very like person to person type of like I get really invested in people, I guess is the simplest way to put it. And out of every like 20 people I interview, only one person gets a job, but it's not like I don't forget the other 19 people. So when I get to see people that like have achievements, and I get to be a part of that story of their trajectory, Um, I mean, it's hard not to be satisfied when like I get to see somebody become a manager that wasn't originally a manager before. And so that's super rewarding. Like at the end of the day, I love being able to congratulate somebody and say congrats on the job and everything. But I've realized like I've seen a few people get hired and promoted. I mean, and it's just like, I can say I did that. I can say I was like a part of that. And people usually remember who their recruiter was when they're in their jobs, because only one person like had to do the salary negotiations, had to like expedite the interview process because you're doing like late round interviews or whatever. And so, I get so invested in these people, and I feel like I get the most out of it when that happens. Challenges wise, I think everybody prioritizes or is always working on like time management, if you will. Um, I think the hardest part for me or most challenging part um is just being like decisive. I think um a term going around the last few or recent years is like imposter syndrome, and not feeling like you're supposed to be in the job that you're in, that you don't deserve that job. And I think there's a lot of intersectionalities of identity as to why people can experience that at different levels. That said, um, it's really hard not to feel that way. I'm a first generation college student. I am in a new city, and vast majority of my really large family is never left the Bay Area. Matter of fact, I'm the only one that's ever left. And so I'm like in a new city with very few people that I know. I'm in an industry that I don't know anybody that's ever worked in. I didn't even know you could work in this industry. And I'm in a job that like people that is new. No one's ever done the work that they wanted me to do. And I know I'm doing really well. But like I'd be lying if like I wasn't working like so many extra hours to prove myself. And anytime I would get a message from like my boss, I would always assume I was in trouble. And I was always wrong. And it was just because like I just wasn't sure if I was doing everything right, or I was always just afraid of doing something wrong. And so just like trusting my instinct has been like a nice journey of like self confidence for me in this job, because it's the longest I've been in here. I've cemented my like contributions in this company more than I ever have in any other company. And so I think being here for longer has just helped me be more confident. And ultimately, the culture at this company makes it a lot easier for me not to have those like lows. But it's just something that I think I'll always carry with me, but I've gotten better at over like the last year. So yeah.
Well, speaking of workplace culture, you are doing something pretty cool over there at Live Nation as a lead for the AAPI Employee Resource Group. Could you talk a little bit about that? What you're doing there, and the impact that you're hoping to have?
Yeah, for sure. So most mid to large size companies have employee resource groups. I just happen to be born being an AAPI person, and so that's the one I want to work on. It's really just an opportunity to get to know your folks, your employees, your coworkers more, especially in every position you have like your like silo of people in certain departments that you work with. This lets you get to talk to people that you never normally would ever speak to. The kind of opportunities or resources we're trying to provide, specifically me, is we want to celebrate other cultural events, specifically with an API heritage that gives all employees opportunities to connect with one another, such as like Diwali, that just happened like last month, such as API month in May, and like Filipino Heritage Month, as far as for myself as a Filipino American. Um, we try to schedule events, and it doesn't have to be too fancy. You get free food. Throw in a few like slides about like why we're doing this event, or why we're trying to build this community here. It just creates a lot of opportunities for people to really appreciate their company, appreciate like the fact that you don't have to just work in your own like little box sometimes. Um, and especially in a company like ours, I think it's really important that people know that there are opportunities to grow, transition laterally into a different team. just not feel like you are cemented into like this one career trajectory in the job that you are in the biggest company as like Live Nation is. And so we do a lot of opportunities for like career, essentially what like the career advisors do at Castle Long Beach for me, that's what I do here. We have like monthly office hours and we get to speak to folks that are in any job, no matter how cross collaborative or not, and just say like, hey, like I love this job, but I want to do something else. Okay, let's talk about it. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, and it actually transitions nicely into our question about mentorship and networking. Um, how important is mentorship and networking in your industry? And what how do you network and how do you find mentors?
Yeah. So when it comes to mentorship, it's really people think you need to have like a go-to person that you can talk to on a monthly basis, and have this like one-on-one coffee chat and um, essentially ask if you're doing everything right or not. Um, in some cases, it is. I think it's like the best situation. At the end of the day, like you can get a lot of like little pieces of information from a lot of different folks in a much more transactional, easier way. Going to network and with transitions into like networking, just hit people up that graduated from your college from Cal State Long Beach and have jobs or careers or work in industries that you want to work in. Um, so many people from Cal State Long Beach will message me on LinkedIn and say like, "Hey, former 49er as well. Um, and I am really interested in trying to pivot from the healthcare industry into music, just like you are. Do you have any tips?" And so I always answer those messages. I try to spend like 30 minutes a day on LinkedIn. It's just part of my job as a recruiter itself, but it isn't hard to just kind of put yourself out there. I know people get the more introverted people, if you will, get really nervous about that, but like guidance helps a lot. Like take it from me. I had nobody in my shoes that can tell me what to do this or that. At least I got to speak with a counselor that could hear me out and funnel my bad ideas out and focus on the good ideas. Um, and so you can get a lot of little pieces of information from a lot of different people just through LinkedIn itself. Um, whether it's from reaching out to people from your university or people that are from the city that you're from, or just something else. Maybe you're the same sports fan. It could be anything. And trying to build conversations through LinkedIn that way. You very rarely get the opportunity to have phone conversations, coffee chats, get to have somebody from your city, from your university in the same industry that you want, and that's gonna, jump on a call with you at any time of day. But you can find much more like accessible ways to do so through free platforms. So it's more about like your own initiative, I would say.
Right. And I mean, do you have anyone that you would say is really pivotal for you as far as, networking or mentoring is concerned?
Yeah, so I I had my career counselor back in college, um, at Cal State. When I was trying to find my footing in my career, my first year and a half before becoming a recruiter, frankly, I really didn't. I just worked hard doing like Uber, Lyft, sales, and like a couple of smaller internships on the side. And I was working like education, I was working in nonprofit, I was working in healthcare, like patient care. So just three super different industries. Um, and I had a mentor in the nonprofit sector that I entered for him in college. I met him when he was a guest speaker at one of my elective classes, like my second or third year, who helped me grow in the nonprofit space for the first 2-ish, 3 years afterwards. But really, the last 6 years I've been a recruiter, 5-ish years I've been a recruiter. And um my first manager in that job who hired me has really been my go-to sort of mentor and resource. I am lucky enough to work with him again as my manager now. But just someone that I supremely get along with, that we've, went out to happy hour and got drinks or seen a comedy show after work kind of thing. It is really nice when my manager also happens to be like my mentor, which doesn't all you would think it's synonymous, but isn't always the case. Um, but I think generally just find a couple of folks that you can really get along with outside of or in work through your job, but that you can get along with outside of work. And it I think it just helps bring you a support system in every stage of your career in every company that you work at. Um, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think one of the things that is affecting so many different industries, and I think, everyone's really curious as to, how it affects, you know, any industry that it is. But I think that's something a lot of people are thinking about is the advances in AI technology. Um, how is AI playing a role in your field? And is it impacting it in a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think in the greater music industry, AI is impacting how we do things in terms of if you're a musician, AI can help you write a contract for you to work with a venue to put on a show. AI can help you when you're trying to put on a show in like creating a marketing plan. This is what we'll do in social media, on digital, emails. AI helps you in really just kind of creating a brand slash a business version of yourself as a musician or somebody that's working in the music industry. It just kind of does a lot of like the dirty work for you that has to do with paperwork or emails and things. I mean, like open source, like just, GPT, Cloud AI, those kinds of things just help you like make all the hard conversations easy. When it comes to live events ourselves, I don't, it doesn't really hit us as much because at the end of the day, our job is to promote shows, is to sell out shows with butts and seats, if you will. And AI doesn't know and like Megan the Stallion's core demographics and audience and what platforms they're on a day-to-day basis. That's just pure trial and error and somebody behind a desk doing it. Eventually that'll change. But as far as specifically like live events, not so much. I will say that recruiters eventually will probably be obsolete to some extent. I can already see how AI is already doing my job for me, or at least makes it a lot easier. I use it on a weekly basis. I do write my own emails, but every now and then I get a little lazy and I don't want to think so hard. So I use AI myself, but gotta be careful with that. Um, it's absolutely still being used. I think it's more on like a day-to-day basis than it is like strategically like how is it affecting the greater live events industry? I don't really know. I'm just a recruiter. I just hire people. But as far as like building your brand on like an individual scale, I think it's immense in this especially in this industry where everyone's trying to, get more eyes on them, if you will, and self-promote.
And, do you think, as a recruiter, do you think you can tell when somebody has used an AI tool to write their resume or cover letter?
Kind of, yes. There are the easy ones. People forget if you copy and paste from a Cloud AI, Open GPT, what have you, that if you paste it onto your Gmail, it comes off as like a text box. So people will write, you know, a thank you email, and they'll say, thank you so much for, meeting with me. And then the next two sentences are in this little box that says like, I especially think that my experience at Live Nation Entertainment will be really great because XYZ. And then at the end, it just says thanks again for, taking the time and puts their name afterwards. And it's just like it's so blatantly obvious. I mean, there are just certain times where people don't have the same voice or tone in their emails. You just kind of assume. Internal employees of my own company are guilty of this. So it's not like no one's like unscathed. But just be a little slick about it. My best recommendation would be use AI as a tool, not as your writer for you. Take it, copy and paste it, edit it to your own voice, and make sure it's not in like that little text box that when it before it gets sent out, and you'll be fine.
Awesome. So how do you yourself juggle the all important work-life balance?
Yeah. I've grown to like this question a lot more. I think if for me, I just set really strong barriers or parameters for how I do my job on a day-to-day basis. I used to interview like 8 to 10 people on certain days, so that's like 4 or 5 hours of my day strictly talking to people one on one, asking the same questions. It was just so draining, even for somebody as like I guess like social as myself. And then I turn that into like, okay, I block out the first half of my day on Mondays. I block out the second half of my days on Fridays. I never have more than like an hour and a half block at any point in my day. That way I never have to do 3 interviews at once. Um, and that creates balance in my job, um, which helps me manage the rest of my job collectively. And so once I got my job figured out, and by that I mean prioritize really effectively. Um, I think journaling every day is a great benefit in general. I think thinking about how productive you were on a day-to-day basis in your own job helps you in being more productive and just optimizing when you work best, what you know you don't like to do in your own current job. And then ultimately, once I can get the job part right, it becomes a lot easier for me to get the personal life part right. So the short answer is you get your job priorities figured out, you allocate your time effectively, you prioritize really well on a day-to-day basis, then your life can make a bit more sense. I used to work close to 60-hour days in this job, not specifically in this company, but as a recruiter, I used to do so. I'm never going back to that again. I'm a lot better than I used to be as a recruiter, but I've also just prioritized and like been more conscious of the time of how I spend my time. Um, and now I work 40-ish hours a week, and that's kind of, I think, normal, if you will. Um, yeah, it's an unsexy way of putting it, but just prioritize well. Think about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, sane advice, simple advice, I think always the best advice, right?
Yeah, and I will, and just to add something, it's not for everybody. Like I learned in like doing like one of these like 10 other personality assessments, productivity assessments, kinds of things. And I learned that like I work best during the middle of the day. Or I mean in the first half of the day. I learned that I work best when the sun is out and I work worst when the sun is not out. So like I realized that like during the summertime, I can be more productive during the day because like I got like the sun coming in. And during the winter time, like there's just less hours of the days that like I'm just like in a good mood because it's like foggy here in the Bay Area. It gets dark a lot sooner. I just realized, okay, like maybe I gotta like just start my job earlier so I can kind of work things out. I know people, their work-life balance working from like 2 to 9 because they're like night owls and they just kind of prefer the evening hours of the day and they hate the mornings. So there's definitely no one size fits all when it comes to work-life balance.
Yeah, for sure. And as we're wrapping this up, there's one question that I always love to ask, which is if you could go back to yourself at when you were about to graduate from the beach and you could give yourself one piece of advice, what do you think that would be?
My advice to myself at 21, 22 years old, I would have to say is trust your gut. Trust that your work will speak for itself. Uh, when you see other people look like that they're being super successful, know what they want, got into that big four accounting firm or that big name company, whatever it is, just don't take it to heart. Um, the less you compare yourself and the more you let your work speak for itself, um, and you find creative ways to build your network at the same time, you'll eventually get to where you want to be. Those first 2 years can be very, very tough. Um, I felt extremely defeated my first job and my first really big interview when I didn't get it. And like I did all these much less exciting company interviews and I did amazing. And the one job I was so excited about, I did horrible in my interview. Um, so don't put so much pressure on yourself when it's not necessary. And please don't compare yourself to all these other folks because you have your own journey and you're always going to be working on that one. And your story and your perspective means so much more when it's only yours. So don't compare yours to anyone else's.
Awesome. That is great. Well, Joseph, I want to say thank you so much for helping us with this 49er Industry Chat series and for sharing your journey with us. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that folks can get out and really take to heart and use as they're exploring their own journeys. So thank you so much. Um,
I'm happy to be here. Absolutely. I'm honestly honored
yeah,
to be asked to share my experiences with the place that, gave me the foundations of what I feel like I am really good at right now. So
that's awesome. Well, if anyone wanted to, maybe continue the conversation and ask you anything else about your job, how might they be able to reach out to you?
LinkedIn, that should be Joseph Sapida on LinkedIn. It's very much up to date. So if you look up Live Nation, you find me. And just shoot me a LinkedIn message. I don't want to say DM me, but it's essentially that. And just tell me, you're at the beach, our beach, and if you have any specific questions, getting into the music industry, making career pivots, or anything that lets me talk about myself, I'll probably be happy to do it. So yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and thank you all so much for joining in, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you, everyone.